In this video, we're going to talk about what makes bees good bees and why you don't need to know a single thing about genetics or even a whole lot about the bees in order to breed good bees. And we're going to talk about that coming right up. Hi, I'm Scott McPherson, and this is Beekeeping from Scratch, where it's about the bees. Now, before we get started, if we haven't met yet, my name is Scott McPherson, and this is the 7th installment of the show, Nothing But Bees, where we discuss theoretical beekeeping topics such as history, myths, core concepts, and issues that are facing our bees. If you have watched a few Beekeeping from Scratch videos, then please consider subscribing and ringing the little notification bell icon so that you're notified the minute we upload our next video. Your subscribership and watching these videos all the way to the end really helps out this channel and get information out in front of other beekeepers and other people that are interested in bees. All right, now let's get to it. Now, most people have a fair but vague and incomplete understanding of what the words genes and genetics mean. But when you start a serious discussion of genetics, words like alleles, phenotypes, meiosis, locus, and when specifically talking about bees, haplodiploidy and parthenogenesis, among others. Most people have no idea what any of that means. But listen, to breed good bees, you don't need to know any of that. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. The first thing you need to understand is that the golden age of beekeeping is over. The number of beekeepers who can remember a day when a beehive would remain filled with bees for an untold number of years is dwindling. Bees and beekeepers across the country, continent, and around the world are worrying about or battling a number of difficulties that challenge our bees' ability to survive. The three current worst challenges facing our bees today are modern agriculture, mites, small hive beetle, and sometimes wax moth. But that's more of a problem with comb storage than it is really a problem for your bees. If your colonies get wax moth, well, then your colonies were probably dinks and probably should have been turned into nukes anyway. You can also include winter in that list of challenges for bees that are kept in the temperate zones. So now you might ask, why do I say novel difficulties? Well, novelty is something that's new and unfamiliar, and for the Western honeybee, or at least the largest majority of bees, these are new and unfamiliar problems. If they were not new and familiar, then they wouldn't be as big of a problem as they are for the bees. You also might wonder why I said mites and not Varroa. Well, Varroa is just the current mite that's facing us. Mites have been part of the bees' ecology for as long as bees have existed. We are aware of a small number of them, and today we are faced with three distinct kinds of mites that either are just yesterday a serious problem today, or will become a serious problem tomorrow. Those mites are tracheal mites, also known as acarine or the Isle of Wight disease, Varroa destructor, everybody knows what that is, and the new one around the corner, Tropolalaps. Depending on where you are around the world, whether that's tropical, subtropical, or one that is more temperate, the landscape of challenges is going to be different. In temperate zones, Varroa and winter are the two biggest challenges. In the tropics and subtropics, small hive beetle and wax moth are the biggest challenges facing beekeepers. I know when I was keeping bees in Florida, Varroa was not even on the radar. And small hive beetles were taking down hives left and right. And not just taking down the colonies, but ruining combs and ruining the honey. Life. All life has exactly one prime directive. I'm going to give you just a few moments to think about what that might be. If you pick to reproduce, then give yourself a gold star. Everything else that all forms of life do is to accomplish that one goal. If you can understand that, then you've taken the first step towards breeding good bees. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of really smart people out there saying, hold up, hang on, there's a lot more to it than that. Well, you're right. And this is an intentional but correct oversimplification. Taking all the variables, diversions, deviations, and exceptions out of the equation, the prime directive of life is to reproduce. All other directives are secondary and fall underneath that umbrella of the prime directive in one way or another. So take this under advisement. I am going to oversimplify frequently and often in this video, and I don't want to waste a whole lot of time explaining that at each step. In order to reproduce, exactly three things need to happen first. Listed in chronological order and therefore order of importance, they are: 1, you need to be born. Well, okay, bee swarm, they aren't exactly born, but let's just go with this. The bottom line is you need to exist first. So, in order to breed bees, you have to have bees. 2, you need to survive. Now, this one should be pretty self-explanatory. Can you reproduce if you're not alive? No, of course not. And 3, you need to be able to compete. Now, this one's a little more complex, and it has a strong relationship with the ability to survive. But to keep it simple, you need to grow fast, become and stay strong, and efficient. In the case of bees, you need to find good forage first. You need to build your numbers first. And you need to be able to predict when to move on to the next pasture of forage. And you need to store as many resources away as you can in case of a rainy day or week or maybe even a really bad month. If you don't, the ones that have are going to come knocking at your door and take it all away. And that's probably the end of you if you can't get back on track and prepare for winter. And on top of those 3, you also need a little bit of luck. Luck is all the unknowable variables that either will help or hinder your chances to reach an expected outcome or an unpredictable boon or catastrophe. It's when you wake up late for work because the power went out and your alarm didn't go off in the morning. Now that's unknown bad luck. You didn't know that was going to happen, and it sucks. But what you might not know is that if you had left for work on time, you would have been hit by that truck that ran a red light. Now that's unknowable good luck. You didn't even know that there was a truck that was going to hit you if you had left on time. Now that's unknowable luck, an unexpected boon you know nothing about. You might be late for work, and that sucks, but guess what? You're alive. Okay, so that's luck. That's all the unknown and unknowable contributions that either help or hinder your chances of success. Luck can make your day and it can ruin your day. At the end of all that, if you survive, thrive, and compete, and if luck is on your side, you circle right back to number 1. You give birth to the next generation, in this case, a swarm of bees. You cast that swarm and the cycle starts all over again. Okay, so now you understand the circle of life in a very, very tiny nutshell. Well, what does this all mean for the bees and a beekeeper? Right? Well, number 1 is you got to get bees. If you already have bees this spring, well, that one's already taken care of for you. If you don't, then you either need to catch a swarm, you need to buy a package of bees, or buy a nucleus hive. Swarms are preferable, nukes are a good second choice, and packages should come dead last. Please watch the video that I'm linking to up here to understand why. Okay, number 2, what do bees need in order to survive? They need a clean home, they need clean air, clean food, and clean water. This means no introduction of chemicals, acids, nothing that disrupts the ecology of the bees and the home they're in. It means stay away from huge monoculture farms that have one bloom, if you're lucky, and they spray their fields and crops. It means having a good, clean source of fresh water like streams, ponds, and rivers, and not your neighbor's chlorinated pool. And if you don't have those handy, set up a waterfall pond. The waterfall will keep the water fresh. Don't regularly feed your bees sugar, the exception being when you first get bees and they need to get themselves established and build some good comb out. But after that, learn to leave plenty of honey on the hives for the bees and not just enough to get through winter. Honey is bee food. Make sure they have enough to not just get through winter, but to get through spring if something goes wrong. And for compete, support your strong colonies, the colonies that compete. If you have colonies that are dinks and are floundering, well, turn them into nukes and requeen them with your own queens to support your operation next year. Or use them as comb and brood factories to strengthen your colonies just before or during the beginning of the honey flows. Now, if they're a survivor colony, then maybe you want to let them requeen themselves. They did something right by making it through winter, and maybe you don't want to entirely lose whatever it is that they did right. However, if they are dinky come the flow, then they are no use to you as production hives. So make them useful. Now, we have discussed luck already, Maybe this year you get some bad mites, or maybe the weather just doesn't work out in your favor this year, or maybe the beekeeper sees so much honey that they just inadvertently take more than they should have. And then the fall flow fails. Or maybe a skunk likes the taste of your bees. Luck, you can't do anything about it, but it's going to be on your side today or it isn't. But understand that it is there because the busts and the booms might not have anything to do with you or your bees. Some years, it's just about surviving and getting ready for next year. And finally, we get back to reproduction. Bees just love to swarm. They're happy when they swarm. Additionally, swarming has been shown to be part of the bee's health cycle. Swarming stops the brood cycles for both the bees that swarmed and the colony that they left behind. The new swarm needs to build a nest, and there isn't several weeks of brood in there, so it's a fresh start. The colony left behind is left with a virgin queen, and she needs to mate, and it'll likely be a couple of weeks before she starts laying. So both colonies get that much needed break that interrupts what might be going on with many brood issues. Additionally, the young queen can only lay as many eggs as the newly depleted colony can support. So it'll be a while before many of those brood issues come back. You can take advantage of the swarm instinct, and whenever you find swarm cells in the spring or early summer, consider taking the queen and putting her in a new box with some drawn comb or empty frames if you wish. Move the original colony someplace new but close by and put the new hive where the old colony was. All of the field bees will return to the old queen, while the old hive in the new location will have mostly nurse bees, and they're not going anywhere. Swarm completed. You have doubled your colonies and you have raised a new queen. Leverage the instinct to reproduce to manage how the bees reproduce in the spring to your advantage, so your colonies aren't being weakened but are being strengthened by the flows. Leverage the instinct to reproduce to manage brood-specific pests and diseases like Varroa and its secondary infections. Third, leverage the instincts to swarm to increase your livestocks. The more bees that you have, the bigger the buffer you have between you and complete disaster. The more bees that you have means the more honey that you produce. And the more bees you have means inevitably the more of your bees are out there in the wild supporting your bees, your good bees. And more bees means you can make even more bees. Once you get to the point that you just can't manage any further, you can always start selling off your excess bees in the spring. The cost of bees is at an all-time high, and the prices aren't going to get any lower anytime soon. If you live in colder temperate zones, you can charge a premium for your northern bees. They have real value, and it is an important part of diversifying your beekeeping income. If you could follow these simple steps, providing good clean homes, clean forage, clean water, and increase your numbers from your colonies that survive and thrive while letting the colonies that can't make it die off or be repurposed and requeened from your own queens, growing your numbers so that your bees become the major source of good bees in your area, both wild and managed. You will be breeding good bees, and you didn't need to know anything about genetics to do it. You let your bad bees fail, and you support your good bees, and it will all fall into place, all on its own. An important part of making this happen, I only just brushed upon, but it is important that you grow your operation to as large as you can manage, and then just a little bit further. You can always sell off any extra bees that you just can't manage this year, but it's always best to have more than what you need going into winter. This is called the increase method, and I will touch upon that in another video coming up soon. If you're interested in filming your own beekeeping videos, check out the links in the description below if you want to learn what equipment I use. I get a small commission if you decide to buy, and it doesn't cost you a penny more. If you found this video useful, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions at all, please check out the link to our Facebook group. I'd like to start answering your questions. All right, folks, stay safe, and don't forget, it's about the bees.